The Dragon King let them break Soriel Voss's ember glass pipe because the court preferred a ruined worker to a poisoned throne. The first strike did not shatter it. That was worse. The pipe rang once against the black furnace stone, clear and high, as if it remembered every royal cup Soriel had shaped through its glowing mouth. The sound rose through the royal glass furnace, past the hanging bronze chains, past the shelves of ceremonial vessels, past the nobles who stood with silk sleeves, lifted away from soot, as if labor itself might stain them. Soriel did not move. Her hands were bound in front of her with cooling wire. Not iron. Iron was for criminals. Cooling wire was for glassworkers, who had been accused of contaminating royal glass. It tightened when her pulse rose, biting into the burns across her wrists, as if even her fear had to be restrained for the comfort of the court. Glassmaster Oren Pell lifted the pipe again. "Your Majesty," he said, calm enough to sound merciful. "This tool carried poison trace into the king's ceremonial vessels. The furnace law is clear. A corrupted pipe must be destroyed before the contamination spreads." Soriel looked past him to the black dais where Dragon King Caelan Dain stood beneath the furnace crown. He did not sit. No Dragon King sat inside an active royal furnace. Not when molten glass burned in the central basin and dragon fire ran under the floor in red channels. Caelan stood like a blade forged for a throne, tall, severe, dark-haired, with gold flame caught deep in his eyes, and a black dragon-scale mantle clasped at one shoulder. His face held no softness, only command, suspicion, and a fatigue hidden so carefully most of the court mistook it for coldness. Soriel had seen the fatigue. She had seen his hand tremble after the winter oath cup. She had seen the flame under his skin dull after the council wine. She had tried to warn them. They called it insolence. Oren turned the pipe so every noble could see the blackened glass at its narrow end. A servant glassworker has no right to mark royal vessels after shaping. Yet Soriel Voss trapped unauthorized traces in the inner glass. "I trapped what was already there," Soriel said. The room tightened. Oren's pale brows lifted. "You admit altering the vessels." "I admit listening to them." A noblewoman laughed softly. "Glass does not speak." Soriel looked at the shelves of flawless cups gleaming behind her. Ruby stems, amber bowls, moon-clear rims. Each one had passed through worker hands before noble mouths praised its beauty. Each one had been lifted beneath candlelight by people who never looked toward the furnace where those hands blistered. "No," Soriel said. "It remembers." The noblewoman's smile faded. Caelan's eyes moved to Soriel then. Not kindly, but fully. That was dangerous. A king's attention could feel like rescue until it turned into a cage. Oren stepped in front of her. "She uses old furnace superstition to excuse contamination. Her pipe has shaped 3 ceremonial cups now found with bitter trace. One for Lord Venhal's treaty toast. One for the widow priestess of Marrow Gate. One placed beside His Majesty's own flame wine." The court murmured. Poison in the king's cup was not merely crime. It was treason with a mouth. Caelan's jaw tightened. "Soriel Voss." Her name and his voice struck harder than the cooling wire. "Yes, Majesty. You warned my steward about the flame wine. I warned him not to pour it." "Why?" Oren answered before she could. "Because she knew what she had placed inside it." Soriel turned to him. "Because the glass had already caught a poison trace before wine touched it." A silence followed. Then Oren smiled, small and sorrowful, the way powerful men smiled when they wanted cruelty to look tired of being necessary. "Majesty, she would have us believe poison entered clean royal glass without hand, vial, or culprit." Soriel lifted her bound hands. "No, I would have you believe the culprit was not the hand that made the cup." Caelan's gaze dropped to her wrists. The cooling wire had cut deep enough for blood to gather under the loops. His expression changed by less than a breath. Oren saw it. The accused is skilled. he said gently. "That is why this matter is grave. A clumsy poisoner stains wine. A glassworker poisons the vessel before anyone thinks to test the drink." Soriel felt the court accept the shape of that fear. Of course they did. Her hands were always close to beauty before anyone else touched it. That made her useful when the cups were praised, and filthy when the cups were suspected. Caelan looked at the pipe in Oren's grip. Can it prove what passed through it? Soriel's heart struck once against her ribs. Yes. Oren's hand tightened. Caelan saw it. Not enough. Then show me, the king said. Soriel took one step forward, but the furnace guards blocked her. Oren bowed. Majesty, letting her handle the pipe risks further corruption. Furnace law requires destruction before examination when royal poison is suspected. Soriel stared at Caelan. This was the moment. Not the accusation. Not the wire. Not the court's disgust. This was the moment she would remember. The Dragon King looked at the glassmaster, then at the pipe, then at her, and he chose the clean report before the dirty hands that had tried to save him. Destroy it, Caelan said. Soriel did not beg. Begging would only teach them her dignity could be melted too. Oren brought the pipe down against the furnace stone. This time, it broke. Glass split across the floor in bright ember shards. The court exhaled as if danger had been purified by violence. Then the molten basin behind Soriel turned gold. Not flame gold, poison gold. A thin, glowing trace lifted from the shattered pipe and drifted through the air, winding toward the central glass basin like a thread pulled from a wound. The molten glass rose in a smooth, impossible curve. The nobles stepped back. Oren went still. Soriel looked at the golden trace and felt the furnace answer the part of her no court had ever respected. The trace entered the molten glass. Letters began to form. Not yet a full name. Only the first stroke. A curved mark used in noble house seals. Then the poison gold trace burned one sentence across the molten basin. Poison trace entered the royal glass before Soriel shaped the king's cup. Caelan moved down from the dais. His voice did not soften. Who touched my ceremonial glass before her pipe did? Oren Pell answered before the poison gold sentence finished burning across the molten basin. Trace timing is not innocence, he said. The words cut cleanly through the furnace silence. Calm, educated, ready. That was what made him dangerous. A panicked man could be cornered. A prepared one could turn a knife into a law before the wound was even seen. The poison gold letters still glowed inside the molten glass, bright enough to paint every noble face with sick yellow light. Poison trace entered the royal glass before Soriel shaped the king's cup. Soriel Voss stood beside the shattered remains of her ember glass pipe, with cooling wire biting into her wrists. The court had gone quiet, but not kind. Quiet only meant fear had entered the room, and had not yet chosen where to sit. Dragon King Caelan Dain descended the black furnace steps, his scale mantle catching red light from the dragonfire channels beneath the floor. His eyes remained fixed on the molten basin. Not on her. Not yet. Who touched my ceremonial glass before her pipe did? He asked. Oren bowed as if the question honored procedure rather than threatened him. Many lawful hands, Majesty. Raw royal glass does not leap from sand to cup. It passes through furnace weighing, ash cleansing, ember sorting, chain suspension, first melt, second melt, cooling rest, and only then shaping. A trace entering before her pipe proves only that contamination may have occurred at any furnace stage. Soriel's mouth tightened. Of course. Make the road longer. Scatter guilt across every stone. By the time truth reached the end, the court would be tired enough to blame the person already bound. Caelan looked at her then. Can your broken pipe narrow the stage? Soriel laughed once, without humor. The sound made several nobles recoil more than her anger would have. My broken pipe? She said. You ordered it destroyed. His face did not soften. Good. She did not want softness from the man who had allowed Oren to put her life's work under a hammer. I ordered a corrupted tool destroyed under furnace law, Caelan said. You ordered my only witness killed because his law wore cleaner sleeves than my hands. The silence sharpened. Oren's eyes flicked toward Caelan, measuring. Soriel saw it. So did the king. Still, Caelan did not apologize. He turned back to the molten basin. Can it narrow the stage? Soriel looked at the shards of the ember glass pipe across the furnace stone. Each fragment still held a dim coal-red glow, but the pipe was no longer whole. It would not answer like a loyal thing, waiting to serve those who had broken it. It would bleed truth unevenly now, in pieces. With cost, the pipe can show what it trapped, she said. Not every hand that hid behind the glass before I touched it. Oren spread his hands. Then we have no complete proof. No, Soriel said. You have incomplete control. The poison gold trace in the basin trembled. Caelan noticed. Soriel stepped toward the molten glass. The guards moved again. This time, Caelan lifted one hand. They stopped. Soriel did not thank him. She was not grateful for being allowed near the truth after he had helped wound it. She knelt and picked up the largest shard of the ember glass pipe. Its edge was still hot enough to blister skin, but her hands had known furnace pain longer than most nobles had known hunger. She held it between bound fingers and pressed it toward the molten basin. Poison, gold trace, she said. The molten glass stirred. A thin gold thread rose from the sentence, curling like smoke above the basin. Raw glass memory. The gold thread sank deeper. Beneath it, the molten glass darkened into layers. Clear sand, furnace ash, crushed ember quartz, dragonfire melt, and a pale ribbon of royal seal, glass, reserved only for ceremonial cups. Oren's voice remained smooth. Every royal vessel carries seal glass. That proves nothing. Soriel ignored him. Pre-shaping heat mark. The basin pulsed. A small burn appeared in the gold trace, not from her pipe, not from the shaping stage, but earlier when raw glass was still suspended in furnace chains above the first melt. Caelan's eyes narrowed. Oren's mouth barely moved. That was enough. Soriel saw the fear before he covered it. Noble seal stroke, she said. The first curved mark formed again inside the molten glass, clearer now. It did not become a full name. Not yet. It bent like the lower half of a house sigil, a mark used by noble families to authorize ceremonial glass before court rituals. A noble lord in blue silk took one step back. Only one. But the furnace saw movement. The poison trace flared toward him, then faltered. Soriel's heart struck hard. Caelan saw that too. Why did it stop? Because a seal stroke is not a name, Soriel said. And because someone used furnace timing to keep it from becoming one, Oren said. Speculation. Soriel turned the hot shard in her fingers until the broken hollow faced the bronze chains hanging above the central basin. Furnace chain timing. The chains began to ring. Not all of them. Only 3. The court looked upward. Those chains were used before shaping, before any worker pipe touched royal glass. They lowered raw glass into dragonfire for first memory, when seal glass accepted authority marks from noble witnesses. No servant glassworker controlled them. No bound hand could reach them. The 3 chains rang again. One low, one sharp, one delayed. Soriel listened. Her throat tightened, because the pattern was older than accusation. It was a schedule, a moment. A door in the furnace process opened only to those allowed near royal glass before labor began. My pipe did not put poison in your glass, she said. It kept the poison from disappearing cleanly. The words moved through the furnace like a blade through silk. Caelan looked from the ringing chains to Oren. Who held chain authority for the first melt of my flame? Wine cup. Oren's expression did not break. All chain authority records are kept in the royal furnace ledger. I will gladly produce them once the accused is removed from active contamination range. Soriel smiled faintly, not because anything was funny, because he had finally reached for the ledger before anyone asked whether it had been touched. The pipe shard burned in her hand. The molten basin rose again, answering the broken witness with what little strength remained in it. The poison gold trace sank below the shaped cup memory, below Soriel's heat mark, below the place where her hands had entered the work, down into raw royal glass, before shaping, before her pipe, before her name was ever placed near the crime. The furnace chains rang one final time, and the molten basin burned the truth in poison gold light. Poison trace entered raw royal glass before Soriel's pipe touched it. Caelan looked from the ringing furnace chains to Oren Pell. His voice did not soften. Who authorized the first melt before Soriel's pipe touched my glass? Oren Pell looked toward the furnace ledger before he looked at the ringing chains. It was a small mistake, but Soriel Voss had spent half her life noticing small mistakes in glass before nobles called them beautiful. The furnace chains still trembled above the molten basin. 3 of them. One low, one sharp, one delayed. Their sound faded into the heat, while poison gold words burned across the molten glass. Poison trace entered raw royal glass before Soriel's pipe touched it. Dragon King Caelan Dain stood at the edge of the central furnace light, his black dragon scale mantle catching red fire beneath one shoulder. His face remained hard, but his attention had narrowed into something dangerous. Who authorized the first melt before Soriel's pipe touched my glass? He asked again. Oren turned back from the ledger shelf with a measured bow. First, melt authorization is routine furnace procedure, Majesty. Royal glass cannot enter ceremonial shaping without noble witness and furnace approval. A signature before pipework proves order, not poison. Soriel held the broken shard of her ember glass pipe between bound fingers. Its heat had opened a blister across her palm. She did not lower it. No, she said. It proves someone touched the glass at the only stage where poison could hide from the cup tasters. Oren's mouth tightened by a breath. Worker superstition. Worker memory. A nobleman scoffed. She speaks as if soot outranks seal law. Soriel turned her face toward him slowly. Soot remembers where flame has been. Seal law only remembers who was allowed to lie beautifully. The court stiffened. Caelan did not silence her, but he did not free her either. That mattered. He had stopped the guards once. He had asked better questions. Still, cooling wire bit her wrists because the king, who now needed her truth, had first allowed Oren to bind it. Caelan looked to the furnace stewards. Bring the first. Melt ledger. Oren lifted one hand. Majesty, if the accused reads from the ledger while actively contaminated, any later judgment may be challenged. Soriel laughed softly. There it is again. My hands are too dirty to touch the record, but clean enough to shape your king's cup. Caelan's eyes moved to the wire around her wrists. For a moment, something dark passed through his face. Not tenderness. Recognition. Loosen the wire enough for her to hold the ledger, he ordered. Soriel looked at him. Do not make mercy out of utility. His jaw flexed. I did not. Good. The nearest furnace guard unlocked one loop of cooling wire. Blood returned to Soriel's fingers in needles of pain. She did not wince. She would not give the nobles another small suffering to enjoy. The first melt ledger was brought forward in black glass covers, heavy with furnace seals. Oren reached for it first. Caelan's voice cut low. No. Owen stopped. Soriel reads, Caelan said. The court shifted. Oren bowed, but his eyes had gone colder. Soriel laid the ember pipe shard against the ledger clasp. The furnace will not solve what men hid inside procedure, she said. It can only show where the procedure stopped being clean. She opened the ledger. Pages of heat-black parchment glowed red along the edges. Columns listed vessel batches, chain numbers, seal witnesses, ash weight, ember quartz grade, first melt authority, worker inspection, shaping assignment, and final cooling. Oren spoke immediately. As I said, Majesty, Every mark is routine. First, melt authority always precedes shaping. Soriel did not look at him. Furnace chain authority. 3 columns brightened. Chain 12. Chain 17. Chain 19. The same 3 chains that had rung above the basin. First, melt ledger. The page warmed beneath her hand. A signature began to glow. Not a full name, but an authorization mark pressed in noble wax and sealed through the furnace office. Noble seal stroke. The curved mark from the molten glass appeared again, now in the corner of the ledger page. The same half sigil. The same broken curve. Not enough to name a house, but enough to prove the poison trace and the written authority had touched the same ritual stage. Oren said, "Many houses use curved authority strokes. That is not identification." Soriel nodded once. Not yet. The words made his eyes sharpen. Caelan noticed. Soriel pressed the shard harder against the page. Shaping heat mark. A faint burn spread under the signature. It did not match her pipe heat. It had formed before the glass was ever passed to her bench, while the raw royal glass still hung in chain suspension above the first melt. Poison. Gold residue. The ledger page bled a thin gold line. The noble stepped back. The line did not move toward Soriel. It crawled upward into the first melt authorization column. Caelan's eyes darkened. "Explain that, Oren." Oren did not hesitate. Residue follows authority, because authority governs sequence. If poison entered the furnace, the ledger would naturally show the stage through which the glass moved. Soriel looked at him. "You are very good at making guilt sound like order." He smiled thinly. "And you are very good at making order sound like guilt." "No," she said. "I'm good at surviving rooms, where men name my labor only when something breaks." The ember pipe shard pulsed. Soriel turned the page slightly so the molten basin could see it. The poison gold line brightened, crossing first melt authority, then skipping the worker inspection column entirely. Skipping. Not fading. Not smudging. Skipping a required mark. Soriel's throat tightened. There it was. The small absence that mattered more than the beautiful signature. "You called my hands dangerous," after letting cleaner hands touch the glass where poison could hide. Caelan looked at the ledger, then at the empty worker inspection column. His voice lowered. "Why is her inspection missing?" Oren bowed his head. Ceremonial urgency. The king's flame, wine cup, was required before the court oath. Worker inspection can be completed after shaping, when furnace authority approves acceleration. Soriel's eyes lifted. "Not for royal drink glass. Silence. Not court silence. Furnace silence." Even the chains seemed to hold still. Soriel dragged the broken pipe shard beneath the missing inspection line. The page flared. A hidden timing mark appeared, beneath the blank column, burned into the parchment but never surfaced. First melt authorized. Raw glass sealed. Poison trace entered. Worker inspection delayed. Delayed until after Soriel had already been assigned the cup. Delayed until her hands could be blamed. The molten basin rose behind her, answering the ledger with poison gold fire. A sentence formed across the glass. First melt authorization signed before royal glass passed worker inspection. Caelan looked from the missing inspection column to Oren Pell. His voice did not soften. "Who delayed worker inspection until after Soriel was assigned my cup?" Oren Pell touched the edge of the furnace ledger, as if a missing inspection could be corrected by closing the book. Soriel Voss saw the gesture. So did Dragon King Caelan Dain. The molten basin behind them still held the last sentence in poison gold light. First melt authorization signed before royal glass passed worker inspection. The words trembled across the surface of the molten glass. Not loud, not accusing, simply present. That made them harder to dismiss. Fire could be dramatic. Glass was patient. It waited until denial grew tired. Caelan looked from the missing inspection column to Oren Pell. His voice did not soften. "Who delayed worker inspection until after Soriel was assigned my cup. Oren's hand remained on the ledger edge. No one delayed it with criminal intent, Majesty. Inspection acceleration is lawful during royal ceremony preparation. The court oath required your flame, wine cup before moonrise. Furnace office procedure allows sequence adjustment under ceremonial urgency. Ceremonial urgency, Soriel said. Oren turned to her. A worker assigned to royal glass should understand furnace procedure. A worker assigned to royal glass understands what procedure is used to protect the vessel, Soriel said, and what procedure is used to protect the person poisoning it. A hiss moved through the court. Caelan did not silence her. He still did not free her fully. One loop of cooling wire had been loosened, but the rest remained around her wrists, biting whenever she moved too quickly. She noticed that. She wanted him to notice that she noticed. His eyes dropped once to the wire. Then, back to the ledger. Not enough. Not yet. Read the next mark, Caelan said. Soriel looked at him. Do not make my pain useful, and call that justice. His jaw tightened. I am asking for truth. You asked for truth. Before you let him break the tool that held it. The furnace seemed to breathe around them. Caelan took the blow without answering. Good. If he defended himself, she might have hated him more cleanly. Soriel lifted the broken ember glass pipe shard again. Its edge had burned into her palm, but the pain helped her keep steady. The pipe was not whole. The furnace was not merciful. Neither would unfold a perfect accusation simply because the king had finally begun asking the right questions. The shard can read traces tied to its own work, she said. It cannot drag every name out of a sealed office mark. Oren inclined his head. Then we should stop, before speculation becomes judgment. No, Soriel said. We stop when your clean language runs out of places to hide. She touched the shard to the ledger page. Shaping assignment mark. A red line appeared in the column beside her name. Soriel Voss. Flame wine ceremonial cup. Final shaping. Cooling supervision. Her name glowed sharp and clear, the way names always did when blame needed a handle. Oren gestured toward it. There, Majesty, she was assigned the cup. Soriel did not look away from the page. Delayed inspection seal. A second mark surfaced beneath the blank worker inspection column. Not visible ink. Heat-sealed pressure. The kind made by furnace office wax pressed into parchment while the record was still warm. The seal glowed dull amber. Caelan leaned closer. That seal was hidden. Oren answered smoothly. Deferred marks often settle beneath the page if the ledger cools too quickly. Soriel almost smiled. Ledger cooling can hide sloppy ink, she said. Not office wax. The amber seal brightened. Acceleration order. The page shuddered. A narrow strip of writing emerged along the lower margin, compressed so tightly it had looked like a decorative burn line before the shard woke it. By furnace office authority, worker inspection deferred until after shaping assignment. Royal ceremony urgency approved. Caelan's face turned still. Too still. Who approved it? He asked. Oren bowed. Furnace office approvals pass through my seal, Majesty. That is ordinary. It does not mean I personally handled the glass. Soriel's eyes lifted to his. No one said handled. For the first time, Oren did not answer immediately. The poison gold residue in the ledger page pulsed. Soriel pressed the shard beside the acceleration order. Poison. Gold residue. A thin golden line rose from the lower margin and traveled backward across the page. Not from her name. Not from her bench. Not from the shaping assignment. It crawled from the hidden acceleration order into the delayed inspection seal, then into the first melt authority column where the noble seal stroke waited half-formed like a smile that had forgotten its face. The nobles nearest the basin stepped away. One woman whispered, "That is not worker heat." Soriel looked at her. "No. Worker heat burns red." The line grew brighter. Oren's furnace. Office wax. The amber seal warmed, then darkened. Inside the wax, a fine gold thread appeared, trapped beneath the surface, poison gold residue. Not enough to name every noble who had touched the raw glass. Not enough to show the entire conspiracy, but enough to prove the order that delayed inspection had carried the same poison trace found in the king's glass. Caelan turned slowly toward Oren. Oren's expression remained controlled. Furnace. Office wax seals every royal vessel record. If poison dust entered the office, many documents may carry trace. Soriel's fingers tightened around the shard. You are very careful to make the room larger every time the poison gets close to your hand. Oren's eyes hardened. And you are very eager to accuse above your station. Soriel stepped closer, cooling wire cutting into her wrists. You did not skip inspection to save time. You skipped it until my name could hold the poison. The words struck the furnace harder than any hammer. The molten basin flared. The acceleration order lifted from the ledger page in a ribbon of heat, repeating the sequence in poison gold light. First, melt authorized. Worker inspection delayed. Shaping assignment sealed. Soriel's name entered. Inspection deferred until after blame could attach. The broken pipe shard flickered in her hand. It had given almost all it could. The furnace answered once more, not with a culprit's full name, not with a confession, not with mercy, but with a record cold enough to survive every denial in the room. A sentence formed across the molten glass. Worker inspection delayed until after Soriel's shaping assignment was sealed. Caelan looked at the darkened wax inside the ledger, then at Oren Pell. His voice did not soften. Who used your furnace office seal to make her name carry my poison? The darkened wax began to sweat poison gold. It gathered in a thin bead at the edge of the furnace office seal, too bright to be ordinary heat, too slow to be accident. The bead slid across the ledger page and stopped beside Soriel Voss's name, as if the record itself wanted the court to remember where blame had been placed. Oren Pell did not look at the bead. He looked at Dragon King Caelan Dain. That was wiser. A guilty man watched evidence. A practiced one watched power. Majesty, Oren said. Furnace. Office seals pass through clerks, stewards, chainmasters, ashweighers, and royal ceremony aides. My office mark on a ledger does not mean my hand placed poison anywhere near your glass. Caelan's face remained carved from black fire. I asked who used your seal, and I am answering. Many lawful hands could have pressed it. Soriel looked at the wax. Lawful hands, she said. Cleaner every time you say it. Oren turned to her. The accused remains bound because she remains connected to the contaminated vessel. No, Soriel said. I remain bound because everyone in this room is more comfortable seeing wire on a worker than suspicion on a noble. The nobles shifted. Caelan did not defend them. He also did not cut the rest of the wire. Soriel felt that as clearly as she felt the blister in her palm. He was moving toward truth, not toward her. She would not confuse the two. The broken ember glass pipe shard trembled between her fingers. Its red glow had thinned. A whole pipe could gather poison trace with breath and heat and skill, but a shard could only answer fragments. They had broken the witness, then demanded it speak like something unhurt. Caelan looked at the bead of poison gold wax. Can it be matched? Oren answered first. To the office, perhaps, not to intent. Soriel touched the shard to the seal before Oren could build another wall of procedure. Furnace. Office wax. The amber seal warmed again. Seal mixture. A red-black spiral appeared inside the wax. Dragon ash, furnace resin, powdered ember glass, and one narrow silver thread reserved for the glassmaster's authority. Oren's eyes hardened. All senior furnace records use that mixture. Soriel did not look at him. Press mark. The wax flattened in the air above the page, showing the memory of the stamp that had sealed the acceleration order. Not a full image. The broken shard could not recover everything, but enough appeared. A square pressure mark, a chipped upper edge, and a hairline crack through the left side. A furnace steward, near the chain wall, inhaled sharply. Caelan heard him. "Speak." The steward paled. "Glassmaster Pell's private seal has a left side crack, Majesty. Since the autumn repairs." Oren's gaze cut toward him. The steward looked down. "Private seals can be copied," Oren said. Soriel lifted her eyes. "Then someone copied not only your mark, but your brokenness." A faint sound moved through the court. Not laughter, fear recognizing shape. Caelan stepped closer to the ledger. The heat lit the gold in his eyes. But for an instant, Soriel saw what she had seen after the Winter Oath Cup. A flicker under his skin. A flame forced to burn through weakness. Her stomach tightened. The poison was not only court danger, it was inside him, or had been, many times. Caelan caught her watching. "What?" Soriel hated that he noticed so much now. Too late. "Your flame," she said. The court went still. Oren spoke sharply. "The king's flame is not part of this contamination hearing." Soriel turned the shard toward Caelan. "No," she said. "It is the reason the hearing exists." Caelan's expression did not change, but the dragonfire channels beneath the floor dimmed once. A pulse. A confession the king's face refused to make. Oren bowed deeper. "Majesty, allowing a bound worker to speculate on royal blood flame invites panic." Soriel's voice stayed low. "I saw your hand tremble after the Winter Oath Cup." Caelan said nothing. "I saw your flame dull after the council wine." Nothing. "I warned the steward because the glass remembered bitter trace before wine touched it. Not because I poisoned you." The furnace chains gave one soft sound. Caelan looked away from her, toward the shelves of ceremonial vessels. Ruby stems, amber bowls, moon-clear rims, cups praised by nobles, carried by servants, shaped by workers, and trusted by kings. "Bring the Winter Oath Cup," he said. Oren's head lifted. "Majesty," and the council wine vessel. Those vessels were cleansed. Caelan's voice cut lower. "Then they should not be afraid of the furnace." No one moved for a breath. Then guards went to the shelves. Soriel's hand tightened around the shard. "The pipe cannot read every vessel." Caelan looked at her. She did not soften. "You broke it," she said. "Do not ask ruins to perform like loyalty." His eyes held hers for one dangerous second. Then he nodded once, accepting the strike, without asking forgiveness. The two vessels were brought forward and placed beside the ledger. The Winter Oath Cup still shone pale blue along the rim. The council wine vessel looked flawless, dark amber, gold-threaded, beautiful enough to make every noble remember why they preferred finished glass to the people who made it. Soriel touched the shard, to the Winter Oath Cup. Poison. Gold residue. A thin gold line appeared under the rim. She touched the council wine vessel. Another line appeared. Not as bright. Older, but the same sick gold. Furnace. Office seal contact. Both lines moved from the vessels to the ledger wax. Oren's face remained calm. Too calm. Soriel read the next layer. Ceremonial vessel chain. The 3 furnace chains above the basin rang again. Chain 12. Chain 17. Chain 19. The same rhythm. The same timing. The same door before worker inspection. The molten basin rose behind the ledger, and the poison gold traces from all 3 vessels, Winter Oath, Council Wine, and Flame Wine Cup, curled together into one bright vein. A sentence formed across the glass. Every poisoned royal vessel passed through the same furnace office seal before worker inspection. Caelan looked at the 3 vessels, then at his own hand, as the flame beneath his skin flickered weakly. His voice did not soften. "How many times did my court drink from glass meant to weaken its king?" The shelves of ceremonial vessels looked beautiful until the court began counting them. Ruby stems, amber bowls, moon-clear rims, gold-threaded cups thin enough for candlelight to pass through them like prayer. They stood in perfect rows along the furnace wall, praised for purity, polished for feasts, lifted at oath tables, treaty nights, mourning rites, royal confirmations, and council wine. Soriel Voss had shaped many of them. She remembered the ache in her shoulders after long hours at the bench. She remembered the way nobles smiled at the finished glass without ever letting their eyes fall to the burns on the hands that made it. She remembered the servant tasters who carried those cups forward first, drank, waited, and were blamed whenever a noble mouth needed innocence more than truth. Dragon King Caelan Dain stood before the winter oath cup, the council wine vessel, and the flame wine cup. Poison gold trace connected all three to the same furnace office seal. Every poisoned royal vessel passed through the same furnace office seal before worker inspection. The sentence still glowed in the molten basin behind them. Oren Pell did not look at it. That had become his habit. He looked instead at the king, the court, the places where fear could be turned into procedure. Majesty, Oren said. Shared passage through furnace office is not conspiracy. Every royal vessel must pass seal verification. The same mark on multiple cups proves the office obeyed the law, not that the office poisoned the king. Caelan's face remained hard. I asked how many. Oren bowed. Then we must examine every ceremony record. Quietly, without a bound glassworker stirring panic among the court. Soriel laughed once. No warmth, no softness, just the sound of a burned hand refusing to be covered with silk. You always want the counting done after the room stops watching. Oren turned to her. And you always want spectacle before evidence. No, Soriel said. I want evidence before punishment. You should try it. The court shifted. Caelan did not smile. He also did not correct her. But the cooling wire still held her wrists, and Soriel felt each loop like a memory of his first choice. He turned to the furnace stewards. Bring the taster ledger. A sound moved through the servants near the doors. Not a gasp. Worse. Recognition. Oren's expression sharpened. Majesty. Servant taster records concern discipline, not royal vessel production. Soriel looked at him. They concern bodies you used as proof the glass was safe, until they became useful as proof someone else was guilty. Caelan's eyes moved to her. She did not meet them softly. You are learning where to look, she said. Do not mistake that for having already seen. His jaw tightened. Good. The taster ledger was brought from a lower shelf, not bound in black glass like royal furnace records, but in plain dark leather stained at the corners by years of frightened hands. No noble had polished this book. No clerk had gilded its edges. It was not meant to be admired, only used. Soriel reached for it. Oren stepped forward. The accused should not handle discipline records. Caelan's voice cut through him. She reads, All unstable. Soriel took the ledger with bound hands. The leather was warm, though it had not been near flame. Names could hold heat too, when enough fear had been pressed into them. She laid the ember glass pipe shard against the first page. The shard is nearly spent, she said. It cannot open every punishment in every cup. Caelan looked at the fading red glow inside the glass fragment. His eyes darkened, but he did not say the thing both of them knew. You broke it. Soriel said it for him. You broke it. So we read, what ruins can still bear? No one moved. She touched the shard to the page. Taster record. Several names glowed. Mavin Holt. Fever after winter oath. Removed from service. Kessa Rill. Collapse after council wine. Accused of stealing from vessel tray. Doran Vale. Throat burn after treaty toast. Confessed under furnace wire. Soriel's fingers went still. She knew Doran. He had been 17. Thin as a reed. Always hungry, always careful to smile at glassworkers, because servants knew what it meant to be invisible until something went wrong. Oren sighed softly. Unfortunate incidents. Servants sometimes drink from residue vessels, steal ceremonial drops, or mishandle cleansing water. Soriel looked up. You made hunger sound like poison. Oren's eyes hardened. Do not turn discipline into poetry. Do not turn murder into housekeeping. A low ripple went through the servants by the doors. Caelan heard it. For the first time, he looked toward them. Really looked. Soriel pressed the shard against Oren's name. Poison. Gold residue. A thin gold line lifted from the page. Not from the servant's confession. Not from the discipline seal. It moved backward into the vessel column. Ceremonial vessel chain. The 3 chains rang again. Chain 12. Chain 17. Chain 19. The same rhythm. The same delay. Furnace. Office seal contact. The gold line ran from Doran's taster record to the darkened wax in the royal furnace ledger. Oren spoke quickly. Residue transfer is expected. Tasters drink from the vessel. If the vessel is contaminated, their record will show contact. Soriel looked at him. Then why does the trace enter the glass before their mouths touch it? Silence. She turned the shard to Maven's name. Same gold line. Kessa's name. Same gold line. 3 servants. 3 ceremonies. 3 punishments. 1 furnace office seal. 1 pre-inspection passage. 1 poison trace entering glass before worker hands, before servant mouths, before wine. The molten basin rose slowly, as if the glass itself was tired of being admired by liars. A sentence formed in poison gold light. Servant tasters were blamed after poison had already entered the royal vessels. A servant woman near the door covered her mouth. Another bowed her head and began to weep without sound. Caelan looked at the taster ledger, then at Soriel's bound wrists. His hand moved, not toward her, toward the dagger at his belt. Oren saw it. Majesty, freeing the accused before full judgment would imply confidence in contaminated testimony. Caelan's eyes remained on the wire. Soriel's voice stopped him before the blade cleared leather. No. He looked at her. She hated that a part of her wanted the wire gone badly enough to almost let his guilt perform rescue. No, she repeated. You do not cut it because the room has finally become uncomfortable. You cut it when the law that bound me is dead. Caelan's hand fell still. The furnace burned between them. Then he turned to Oren Pell. His voice did not soften. Who ordered servant tasters punished for poison the glass already held? Oren did not look toward the servant doors. That told Soriel Voss more than his answer would. The servant tasters stood half-hidden beneath the furnace arch, gray-clad, silent, trained by years of court survival to make themselves smaller whenever noble danger entered a room. But now, the molten basin had named what their bodies already knew. Poison had entered the royal vessels before their mouths touched the glass, before their throats burned, before their confessions were forced out under wire, before hunger, clumsiness, and theft were written over their names. Oren Pell folded his hands. Taster punishments are issued through royal discipline, Majesty. The furnace office reports vessel condition. It does not decide servant guilt. Soriel looked down at the taster ledger. Mavin Holt, Gissa, Rill, Doran, Vale. 3 names glowing faintly under poison gold residue. Convenient, she said. Your office sends the glass. Their bodies take the blame. Another office writes the punishment. By the time guilt finishes walking through the palace, no one remembers where it began. Caelan Dain's face stayed hard, but the flame beneath his skin dimmed once. Soriel saw it in the hollow of his throat, a brief falter of gold under flesh. He had been weakened, not in one dramatic strike, slowly, ceremonially, beautifully, cup by cup, toast by toast. The nobles had not needed to stab the Dragon King in the open. They had only needed him to keep trusting the glass. Oren turned toward the court. The accused twists process into malice because process condemns her. If servants were punished, it was because their behavior after contact warranted discipline. A servant woman near the doors made a small sound. Not protest. Memory. Soriel closed the taster ledger carefully. What behavior? Oren's mouth tightened. Panic. Collapse. Unauthorized removal from service. attempted concealment of symptoms. They were poisoned, Soriel said. They were investigated. They were afraid. They were accountable. Soriel lifted her bound wrists. You love that word, when the powerless are the only ones wearing wire. The furnace chains answered with a faint tremor. Caelan heard it. So did Oren. The broken ember glass pipe shard in Soriel's hand had gone dull at the edges, red fading toward black. It had read too much from too many wounds. It would not carry the whole court into truth. Not alone. Caelan looked at the shard. Can you make another vessel that catches the trace cleanly? The room changed. Hope moved through the nobles too quickly. Of course it did. Make the worker useful again. Make the burned hands produce another beautiful thing. Make the truth into labor before justice had even begun. Soriel looked at Caelan. He did not look away. I can, she said. Oren's expression relaxed by a fraction. Caelan's did not. Soriel let the silence hold long enough for every person in the furnace to hear the next word before she spoke it. But I will not. The court stirred. Oren's brows lifted. Refusal to perform royal furnace duty during an active contamination inquiry is treason. Soriel turned to him. Then add it to the list of names you need my hands to carry. Caelan's voice was low. Soriel. No. His jaw tightened. She stepped closer to the molten basin, cooling wire cutting deeper with each movement. No more royal vessels from my hands while servant tasters remain blamed for poison. The glass already held. No flame. Wine cup, no oath cup, no treaty bowl, no morning glass, no ceremonial vessel touched by me, until every taster punished from those poisoned cups is freed from discipline record. Oren laughed softly. A bound worker does not bargain with a king. Soriel looked at Caelan. No. A bound worker tells the king why his court kept weakening him. The words struck the furnace like dragonfire. Caelan's eyes darkened, not with anger at her, with something worse for the court, understanding. Oren moved fast. Majesty, this is manipulation. She sees your concern for servant morale and uses it to extort authority. Soriel opened the taster ledger again and pressed the dying shard against Doranvale's name. Taster confession. The page warmed. A strip of hidden writing surfaced beneath Duran's punishment. Confession accepted before poison symptoms fully recorded. A murmur broke among the servants. Soriel moved to Kessa's name. Discipline sale. Another line appeared. Theft charge entered before vessel trace returned from furnace office. Maven's name. Removal order. The page gave a thin, golden flare. Service removal approved before cleansing test completed. Soriel looked up. The shard cracked in her hand. It had almost nothing left. Your punishments were early, she said. Not mistaken, early. The molten basin rose behind her with a tired, poison gold glow. The sentence formed slowly, as if each word had to be dragged through years of silence. Servant punishments were recorded before the poisoned vessel traces were fully tested. Oren's face finally lost its smoothness. Only for a breath. But the furnace saw it. Caelan did too. He looked from the taster ledger to the servants by the arch, then to Soriel's bound wrists. His hand went again to the dagger at his belt. Soriel's voice stopped him before he moved. I told you when to cut it. The furnace went still. Caelan's hand remained on the dagger. Soriel held his gaze. Not because you feel guilty. Not because you need another vessel. Not because your court finally watched the servants bleed in the record. Cut it when the law that bound us is broken. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then Caelan turned to the royal herald. Bring me the furnace law chain. Oren stepped back. Majesty. Caelan did not look at him. His voice did not soften. If her hands are dangerous, then every cup my court praised was dangerous first. The royal herald returned with the furnace law chain carried in both arms. It was heavier than Soriel Voss remembered. She had seen it hanging above the furnace gates since she was a child small enough to stand beneath the workbenches and sort broken glass by color. Back then, the chain had looked holy, black iron links fused with thin gold. each one etched with old royal vessel law: safety, purity, service, obedience. Every apprentice was made to touch it on the day their hands first entered royal work. They were told it protected the throne. No one told them it also protected the people who could blame them. The herald laid the chain across the black furnace stone before Dragon King Caelan Dain. The molten basin dimmed, as if recognizing an old master it did not love. Oren Pell stepped forward at once. "Majesty, furnace law cannot be broken in anger." Caelan looked at him. "Then it is fortunate I am not angry." That was not true. Everyone in the royal glass furnace could feel the anger in the dragonfire channels under the floor. It moved low and controlled, not a wildfire, but pressure beneath stone. Oren bowed. "Furnace law is older than this inquiry. It keeps ceremonial vessels safe. It gives the glassmaster authority to prevent contamination before it reaches the royal mouth." Soriel looked at the chain. "And it gives the glassmaster authority to decide whose hands are contamination." A few glassworkers near the rear of the furnace lowered their eyes, not because they disagreed, because agreement was dangerous. Caelan heard the silence around them. He turned to Soriel. "Read it." She did not move. The cooling wires still held her wrists. One loop loosened, the rest tight. "You still ask as if my hands are available to your command," she said. His face hardened not against her, but against the truth in the words. He drew the dagger at his belt. Oren's voice sharpened. "Majesty," freeing her before judgment risks. "Quiet." The word struck the furnace wall like a blade. Caelan stepped toward Soriel. She lifted her bound hands away from him. "Not fear. Refusal. I told you when to cut it," she said. Caelan stopped. For one breath, the court saw the Dragon King halted by a bound glassworker's will. Then he turned from her to the furnace law chain. What law bound her? Oren's mouth tightened. Cooling restraint under contamination suspicion. "Show me the link." No one moved. Soriel looked at the chain. The ember pipe shard in her palm was nearly black, but one ember still lived in its broken hollow. She touched it to the nearest iron link. Cooling restraint. A mark glowed red. Worker contamination. Presumption. Another link brightened. Glassmaster emergency authority. A third. Royal vessel protection. Gold light flickered across the chain. Oren spread his hands. "There, Majesty. The sequence is lawful. Worker hands are restrained when royal vessels show trace. Glassmaster authority protects the throne until innocence is proven." Soriel stared at him. "Innocence," she said softly. "After the pipe is broken. After the worker is bound. After the tasters confess under pain. After the vessel is cleansed. After the ledger cools. After every noble hand has become too clean to question." The chain trembled under the shard. Caelan looked at Oren. "Where is noble handling presumption?" Oren paused. "Nobles do not handle raw glass in labor stages." "No," Soriel said. "They authorize it. They seal it. They witness it. They place house marks before worker inspection. Cleaner words for touching." The molten basin stirred. Caelan's eyes narrowed. "Where is the clause that tests noble seal contact before worker blame?" Oren did not answer quickly enough. Soriel pressed the shard harder to the chain. "Pre-worker noble seal review. No link lit. First. Melt noble witness accountability. No link. Glassmaster seal contamination test." The chain remained dark. The court went very still. Caelan's voice lowered. "There is no clause." Oren recovered. "Because noble authority is not contamination. It is authorization. The law separates command from labor for a reason." Soriel looked at him. "Yes. So command can poison, and labor can hang." The furnace gave a low groan. Not from fire. From agreement moving through metal older than every noble in the room. Caelan took the dagger in both hands and placed its edge against the worker contamination presumption link. Oren stepped forward. "Majesty, if you cut that link, Every ceremonial vessel law becomes challengeable. Glassworkers could refuse shaping, servant tasters could dispute discipline, noble witnesses could be delayed by inspection demands. Soriel's voice stayed calm. Good. Caelan did not look at her. He looked at the chain. Furnace law protected my cup from worker hands, he said. It did not protect my blood from noble seals. Then he struck. The dagger did not cut iron. Dragon fire did. Flame surged under Caelan's skin, weak at first, then fierce enough to run down the blade in a gold-black line. The worker contamination link split, with a sound like glass cracking under winter water. The furnace shook. The cooling wire around Soriel's wrists loosened by one full turn. Not opened, loosened. Oren saw it and went pale. Caelan struck the second link. Glassmaster Emergency Authority. It cracked, but did not break. The dragonfire faltered. Soriel saw the weakness take him. A brief tremor in his wrist, a shadow under his eyes. The poison had not left him simply because truth had entered the room. The court saw too much. Oren seized it. The king's flame is unstable. This is exactly why procedure must hold. Soriel stepped forward, still bound, and placed the broken pipe shard against the cracked link. Not to help him, to finish what the law owed her. Glassworker Witness Authority, she said. No link existed for it. So the furnace made one. A new glow formed between broken iron and gold, not from Caelan's flame alone, not from Soriel's shard alone, but from every vessel her hands had shaped and every poison trace her pipe had preserved. The chain split. The cooling wire fell from her wrists, not because Caelan rescued her, because the law that had bound her lost its claim. A sentence formed across the molten basin in poison gold and ember red light. Furnace law presumed worker guilt before testing noble seal contact. Caelan looked at Soriel's freed hands. He did not reach for them. At least he had learned that much. His voice did not soften. Name the law that replaces it. Name the law that replaces it. Soriel Voss looked at Dragon King Caelan Dain, as if the question had been placed in her burned hands like another piece of molten glass. Not a gift. A danger. Behind him, the furnace law chain lay broken across the black stone. One link had split cleanly. Another had cracked under dragonfire, and the last living ember of her shattered pipe. The cooling wire had fallen from Soriel's wrists, leaving red grooves cut into her skin. The court stared at those marks now. Too late. They had found them ugly only after the law that made them had begun to look guilty. Oren Pell stepped forward. Majesty, no worker may name royal vessel law. Soriel did not look at him. That was the problem. A low murmur moved through the glass workers at the rear of the furnace. Caelan heard it. His face remained severe, but his gold-dark eyes stayed on Soriel. He did not reach for her freed hands. He did not soften his voice. He did not pretend that a broken chain repaired what he had allowed. Name it, he said again. Soriel lifted the dying shard of the ember glass pipe. It was almost black now, a crescent of ruined tool and stubborn memory. Glassworker Witness Authority, she said. Oren gave a sharp laugh. Witness authority for furnace laborers? For the hands that know where heat changed, Soriel said. The molten basin stirred. She stepped toward the broken law chain. No royal drink vessel passes from first melt to ceremony without 3 records read in the same room. Noble seal contact, glassworker inspection, and servant taster condition. The servants near the door went still. Soriel continued. No worker may be bound before noble seal contact is tested. No taster may be punished before vessel trace is complete. No glassmaster may destroy a tool that holds contamination memory before its maker is heard. The last words struck Caelan harder than the rest. Good. Let them. Oren's voice tightened. This would delay ceremony, weaken royal authority, and give soot-handed laborers power over court ritual. Soriel turned to him then. Not power over ritual, she said. Power over poison, the furnace answered with a soft red pulse. Caelan looked at the molten basin. Will the furnace hold that law? Oren moved quickly. Majesty, old furnace law cannot be remade by speech. It requires a clean vessel, a royal seal, glassmaster witness, and dragonfire. Soriel smiled without warmth. You forgot worker hands. I did not forget, Oren said. I excluded. Yes, she said. That is cleaner. The nobles shifted again. Less confidently now. Soriel picked up one of the unshaped royal glass cores from the furnace tray. Raw, cloudy, pale as frozen honey. It had not yet become beautiful enough for the court to value, but the memory was already waiting inside it. Caelan's gaze sharpened. What are you doing? Making a vessel your court cannot drink from unless it survives being honest. Oren snapped. She refused royal vessel duty. I refused to make another vessel while the tasters were blamed, Soriel said. Free their names. Caelan turned to the royal discipline scribe. The taster punishments connected to winter oath, council wine, and flame wine are suspended. Soriel's eyes did not soften. Suspended is a noble word, for not yet clean. Caelan held her Gaza. Then he said, stricken from discipline pending vessel trace review. Their service records restored. Their families compensated from royal treasury until full judgment. Oren's face went white around the mouth. Majesty. Caelan did not look at him. Enough. Soriel placed the raw glass core on the furnace iron and held her ruined pipe shard above it. The pipe is broken, she said. It cannot carry the law alone. Caelan stepped closer. Then what does it need? She hated the part of her that noticed how weak his flame still looked under his skin. How the poison had hollowed the king, while his court praised ceremonies meant to strengthen him. Not you, she said first. His jaw tightened. Then she looked toward the rear of the furnace. Them, the glassworkers, did not move at once. Years of being useful had trained them against becoming visible. Soriel raised her burned hands. If royal vessel law touches our labor, it begins with our witness. One by one, glassworkers stepped forward. Old furnace men with scarred palms, young apprentices with soot under their nails, women who had shaped mourning bowls, treaty cups, oath vessels, and the thin, clear goblets nobles called delicate, while never asking how many hands bled to make them so. Oren's composure cracked. This is insurrection. No, Soriel said. Inspection. The workers laid their hands around the raw glass core without touching it. Heat gathered from them, red and human, not dragonfire, not noble seal. Work heat. Caelan drew his dagger again, but this time he did not raise it over the chain. He cut his own palm. The court inhaled. Dragonfire welled in his blood, dimmer than it should have been, but still royal, still dangerous. He let one drop fall beside the raw glass, not on Soriel, not over her hands, not claiming the work. Royal seal, he said. Soriel looked at the blood, then at him. You do not seal over us. No, he said. Beside, that was better. Not enough, but better. Soriel lowered the pipe shard to the raw glass core. Glassworker witness authority. The raw glass glowed ember red. Servant taster protection. A thin ring of pale gold formed around it. Noble seal contact. Tested before worker blame. The molten basin surged. Oren stepped back. Too late. The new vessel did not form into a cup. It formed into a shallow, clear disk, like a mirror made for fire. Inside it, poison gold residue began to move. Not toward Soriel, not toward the tasters, not toward the glassworkers. It moved across a pattern of noble seal strokes, each one curved, pressed, and half hidden beneath ritual authority. One stroke became 3, 3 became 6. Names did not appear yet, but housemarks did. Lord Venhall's treaty seal, the widow priestess mark of Marrow Gate. 2 council houses Soriel had seen drinking from cups she shaped, and beneath all of them, Binding each mark with the same cracked wax pressure lay Oren Pell's private furnace office seal. The molten basin behind them burned with a new record, colder than flame and sharper than accusation. Noble housemarks entered poisoned ceremonial glass through Oren Pell's furnace office seal. The court erupted. Oren moved toward the raw glass disc. Caelan was faster. The Dragon King stepped between him and the vessel, flame flickering weak but lethal across his cut palm. His voice did not soften. "Touch that record, Glassmaster, and I will call it confession." Oren Pell stopped with one hand, raised above the raw glass disc, not touching it, not withdrawing either. For the first time since the accusation began, the Glassmaster looked exactly where every guilty man eventually looked. At the evidence, he could not talk into obedience. The clear disc lay on the furnace iron, shallow and bright, made from raw royal glass, worker heat, servant protection, and one drop of Dragon King Caelan Dain's blood, placed beside the labor instead of over it. Poison gold residue moved inside it like a living vein. Noble housemarks glowed one by one beneath the surface, each connected by the same cracked furnace office seal. Lord Venhall's treaty mark, the widow priestess seal of Marrow Gate. 2 council houses that had toasted loyalty while weakening the king through ceremonial glass. And beneath them all, Oren Pell's private wax pressure. Soriel Voss stood with burned hands lowered at her sides. Free now, but not healed. The cooling wire lay in broken loops on the furnace stone behind her, and the red grooves around her wrists still spoke more honestly than half the court. Caelan did not move away from the disc. His dragonfire flickered across his cut palm, weak in places, but steady enough to make every noble remember he was still king. "Read the marks aloud," he said. Oren's face tightened. "Majesty, house marks inside raw glass require noble arbitration before public naming." Soriel looked at him. Convenient how every truth needs privacy the moment it reaches silk. A sound moved through the glassworkers behind her. Not laughter. Agreement learning how to stand upright. Caelan looked toward the royal herald. "Read them." The herald hesitated. Caelan's eyes turned gold. The hesitation ended. "Lord Venhall's treaty seal," the herald said, voice shaking. "Marrowgate widow, priestess mark, House Caldress council stroke, House Uvern oath mark." The named nobles erupted at once. "Forgery. Worker witchcraft. Glassmaster, explain this." Oren lifted both hands now, no longer toward the disc, but toward the court. "Majesty, noble housemarks entered ceremonial glass as part of approved witness ritual. If poison trace appeared with them, then someone used noble authority marks as carriers without their knowledge." Soriel watched him choose the next body to throw beneath the furnace. Not a worker this time. Not a servant. His own noble clients. Lord Venhall's face darkened. "Careful, Pell." The furnace heard the warning. So did Caelan. Soriel stepped closer to the glass disc. The ember pipe shard in her hand had nearly gone black. It had given everything left inside it. She would not ask it for more than a broken thing could bear. "The disc cannot show every bargain," she said. "It can show what passed through glass." Caelan looked at her. "Then show only that. Only, not more than it could hold." He had learned something. Soriel laid the deadening shard beside the disc. Ceremonial vessel memory. The disc brightened. Images formed within it, not faces clearly enough for full judgment, but hands, seals, ritual stages. A noble ring pressing authority wax before first melt. Oren's cracked private seal following it. A vessel removed before worker inspection. A servant taster drinking days later. A royal flame dimming after each ceremonial cup. Soriel's throat tightened. There was the story the court had refused to read, because it was written in labor, in pain, in dismissed warnings. "Poison trace carrier," she said. The gold vein moved from each noble mark into Oren's office seal, then into raw royal glass before shaping. Not once. Again. 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 The molten basin rose behind the disk, not violently, not like spectacle, like record. A sentence formed in poison gold light across the glass. Noble seals carried poison trace into royal ceremonial vessels through the glassmaster's office before worker inspection. The court went silent. Oren Pell's composure died without sound. Caelan turned to the named nobles. You will be held under furnace guard until vessel memory is read before the full council. Lord Venhall stepped back. You would trust a servant glassworker over noble blood? Caelan's face did not soften. I trusted noble blood over her once. The words struck the room. Soriel looked at him. He did not look away. I was wrong, he said, not softly, publicly, not as romance, as record. Then he turned to the servants by the arch. Every taster punished under these vessels is cleared tonight. Their discipline records are struck, their wages restored, their families compensated from the seized border and furnace accounts of every house named by vessel trace. Oren whispered, Majesty, you are destroying confidence in royal ceremony. No, Caelan said. You poisoned it and called the cup beautiful. He faced the glassworkers next. The law Soriel Voss named stands. No royal drink vessel passes to ceremony until noble seal contact, glassworker inspection, and servant taster condition are read together. No tool that holds vessel memory may be destroyed before its maker is heard. Glassworkers hold witness authority over ceremonial drink safety. The furnace law chain on the stone glowed red. Broken links shifted. Not repaired. Rewritten. Soriel felt every glassworker behind her draw breath. For years, their hands had made beauty without authority. Now the furnace itself held a place for their witness. Oren took one step backward. Caelan's guards closed around him. The glassmaster looked at Soriel then, and hatred finally showed without polish. You have no idea what noble houses will do when laborers can question their seals. Soriel lifted her burned hands. I know exactly what noble houses do when no one can. The guards took him. No one bowed to him as he passed. When he was gone, Caelan approached only as far as the broken cooling wire. He stopped there, leaving the space between them untouched. Soriel noticed. So did the court. I cannot restore your pipe, he said. No, I cannot make the moment I chose his report vanish. No. His voice roughened, but he did not ask forgiveness like a man asking to be relieved. I can make sure no worker's witness is broken again, because a clean sleeve fears a burned hand. Soriel looked at the shattered ember glass pipe. Its pieces had gone dark now, but the disc beside it still glowed with new law. You will begin with Doran Vale's family, she said, then Maven, then Kessa, then every servant punished under a vessel your court praised. As you command. A murmur moved through the nobles at that. Soriel looked at Caelan sharply. He did not correct himself. The Dragon King stood before a glassworker in the royal glass furnace and let the court hear that her command could shape law. Soriel did not smile, but something inside her, long held near the heat, until it almost forgot its own shape, cooled without cracking. The furnace settled. The shelves of ceremonial vessels no longer looked pure. They looked accountable. Soriel turned from the king to the glassworkers waiting behind her. Bring raw glass, she said. Not for a cup. Caelan watched her. For what? He asked. Soriel picked up the clear disc, where poison gold memory still shone beneath the surface. For the first witness vessel, she said. One no king drinks from until every hand that touched it can be named. And inside the royal glass furnace, where her dirty labor had once been blamed for noble poison, every burned hand rose to answer her.